like to bring the meeting to order. Welcome everyone, and I invite our students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will hear a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So we'll move right on to the fun stuff. We have a presentation from Sandpoint Middle School students. Welcome. I'll turn it right over to you.
Great. Thanks for having us here. I'm Scott Penrose. I'm the principal of Sandpoint Middle School, and we are happy to bring 6 students here with you today to tell you a little bit about what makes Sandpoint Middle School special and unique. And we thought about it as we were preparing for this. They thought about it, and one of the things we realized is one of the primary functions of Sandpoint Middle is to bring 7 elementary schools together. They spend 6 years in, and they come together for 2 short years, and then they move up to the high school as a cohesive class for the next 4 years. So that's kind of our role in the district, and these kids are here to tell you a little bit more about it, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Sophia Vanal.
I'm Tegan Newsom.
I'm Christy Benson.
I'm Sienna Todd Murray.
I'm Canyon Lucht.
I'm Hunter Squires. And we're from Media Arts.
Student News knows exactly how to start off the day. They give daily information like the Pledge of Allegiance, lunch options, and later, words of wisdom are given by the principal. This class also creates a weekly video called Ready for Red. So here's a short clip of our weekly video.
Let's go! Yeah, buddy! Okay. Alright. Return to the map. Get what it is, what it does, what it is, what it isn't. Looking for a better way to get up out of bed. Trying to get on the internet and check it on the
That's a good photo. That's really glitchy.
Part of the clip.
Our Design for Change class plays a very big role in helping our community. At the moment, this class is working on the mental health walk to Travers Park. This walk shows the importance of mental health or wellness by reconstructing the wheel. They also have raised 1,500 pounds of supplies for the animal shelter, along with creating an art competition and a healthy recipe competition.
In the Media Arts class, students develop their communication and teamwork skills to create the school's yearbook, along with organizing events such as the Pride Games and the Halloween dance. We also dedicate some of our time to reach out to small businesses to ask for ads in our yearbook. This class helps connect this school as a family by creating our story through a treasured yearbook for the whole student body to enjoy.
Our school offers many different sports teams, including basketball, volleyball, football, cross country, track and field, wrestling, tennis, cheer, golf, and our newest is swim. Sports give students the opportunity to come from elementary school and be part of a team and learn basic communication and teamwork skills. The girls' wrestling team broke a record this year for the biggest female wrestling team and brought home a first place trophy.
Nice.
SMS has many clubs, one of which is IBOB, which stands for Idaho Battle of the Books. In IBOB, student teams build community through reading and competing about books. Another club we have is Ski and Ride. Students can go up to Schweitzer on Wednesdays, but only if they're caught up in their classes. SMS started a brand new club called Esports, where students play video games with their friends and compete for titles in many different games, such as Minecraft, Overwatch, Rocket League, and Brawlhalla.
At SMS, we have many new opportunities to make friends. With our many different clubs, Ski and Ride is very popular. Sports teams, pride games, dances, and our wide range of electives. With our different electives, you can make friends with all the same interests as youth. Many new friendships are made in the 2 years, and we also become a family in our school.
All 7 elementary schools come together as bullpups. They go through a 2-year experience with many opportunities and have fun along the way. After those 2 years, we are prepared for a new journey as bulldogs. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't clap. I forgot about that. I almost
stay for.
Oh, I'm Mrs. Casey. I teach media arts leadership class for these wonderful students. So what grades are you all in? You said media arts, right? You're all in media arts. What grade?
All in 8th grade.
You're all 8th graders. And how many 8th graders are there?
In the
In
whole
the school?
There's
Approximately.
What was it, 207 or something?
there's like 217, I think.
Yeah.
So that's a big class. Moving on to 9th grade. Exciting.
A little more.
Yeah, because
A little more.
there's 500 kids, so it's probably about 250.
250. Do you feel like you know most of them?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. Do our board members have any other questions for you? Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Bullpup Pride Days, the Bullpup Pride Days
So
that you said?
every twice a year, sometimes twice a year, we have these days to where the last hour of school, the whole entire school goes in and watches, and then if a certain group of 7th graders and 8th graders mix, get to go down in the gym floor and participate in school-wide games, and then whoever wins get prizes like that.
So it's us versus Lakeland in a basketball tournament. Like for 8th grade, we do 8th grade girls and 8th grade boys, and we'll have a selected few that'll go down during halftime and compete in just fun games for the rest of the school to watch.
We also have like big incentives too. Like we had a student versus staff volleyball game that the whole school got to watch, and everyone like dressed up, wore tutus, bandanas, and played volleyball against the staff.
Who won?
Yeah.
The staff won
Oh.
by a lot.
Pretty definitive victory.
They might have had height on their side.
Yeah.
Competitive
Yeah.
nature there. I do have a question.
Yes.
Would Mr. Penrose have a word of wisdom for us? Or what was today's? You do it every day?
So the Words of Wisdom is actually a curriculum called Project Wisdom, and it has themed by the month. So this month is about integrity and character, and it starts out every day with, hello, this is Mr. Penrose. Good morning, Sandpoint Middle School. This is Mr. Penrose with a few words of wisdom, and it's a script that I read, and it ends every day with a catchphrase, make it a great day or not, the choice is yours. And we start every day with that idea that we're all about choices, and if it's a good day or bad day, the choice is yours. So
There you go.
do it every day, and we'll be doing it for as long as I'm there, because I love it.
Good. Cool.
Great.
That's awesome.
Are there any other questions? Well, very impressive. Thank you for sharing with us your school and your school spirit and friendship with each other. Thank you. So we'll move right on to the superintendent report. Thank you, Dr. Meyer.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you to parents.
Oh, yes, thank you to
for
those
bringing
parents who have to leave.
I told them they didn't have to stay for my
No, they don't,
and our budget presentation.
unless they want to.
Okay, so superintendent report for April. I just wanted to follow up. Each time now I'm putting in there so that anyone who watches the video and the board is aware of what follow-up I've done with either patron comments or anybody who's requested information from one board meeting to the next. So I did want to let the board know that we had some patron concerns about what was printed in the Daily Bee on a registered sex offender. That was on the front page of the Daily Bee. And there was some questions from some parents on why we didn't notify And I just wanted the board to know, as well as the public, we were not notified of that. That was a confidential law enforcement issue, and we were not notified ahead of time. So I have set up a meeting so that we are going to meet with the sheriff's office about communication and if things go out into the press that we talked about it ahead of time. But I just thought the board needed to know that, and then any other patrons that maybe saw that in the paper and were wondering why we didn't respond as a school district. That was a confidential law enforcement decision. I want you to know that. The other pieces on the library materials, I reported last month that I did talk to a patron about our library materials and just like, what do we have? How do parents have access? That library bill did not end up passing through in the legislature. I'm not sure if I assume it'll come back up again next year. But in our district, we have access to a periodical list by building. We have access to a book list by building, and it's through a program called Destiny. So any patron who wants to be able to see that could go into each building and request that, or they could certainly request that from us at the district office. And this one I wanted to follow up with parent access. This actually wasn't a parent question, this was my question. How do we make sure that parents have access to know what their students are checking out in the library? We do not have the technological capacity to go online as a parent right now and see what your son or daughter has checked out in the library. But every library lead, which we have a library lead at all 11 buildings, 11 schools, you can go in and ask them if they can send it to you, and they can download a PDF and send it to you as a parent. So all parents have access to that information. It's just not to where you go on and say, oh, what has my kid checked out today? I can certainly look into that, but as of right now, that's what our technology capacity is. So I wanted to follow through with that.
Okay.
Oh, question?
Can that be done? That doesn't need to be done physically. The parent can email the library.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
They can email or call the library and just say, can you send this to me? And then we would have their correct email address in our system, so that would be another way they don't have to go in physically. But thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Happy to tell you, after spring break, we are rolling into our last quarter. It does make my blood pressure, I have low blood pressure, but it does make my blood pressure go up because it feels like we're coming to the fourth quarter and it seems like there's so much to do. But it's also exciting because we're coming to the end, and this is where a lot of the fun celebrations happen. So for those of you that attend these meetings or watch them, you know that every month I am doing an update on the transition plan. What was the P of A for the year? And for anybody who's new, you could look at this and see that it's the highlighted were the areas of goals for this year. So Kristen and I are super proud of this, finishing this and having it out into a graphic. Just wanting to remind everyone, if you haven't been before, our 5-year strategic plan was adopted by the board at the last board meeting. You can see our 4 areas here that we're going to focus on for the next 5 years. And in the middle, you can see students are at the center of everything we do. So really proud of that, and we'll be starting to follow up with some of this, but I just wanted to remind everyone. We had our first community coffee clash, 24 signed in. I think there might have even been a few more than that. It was very well attended. If you saw any of the posts, you can see there was kind of like even double rows around. Very well. I thought it was a great success. That's my words there, great success. And because it was such a success, we're already scheduled the second one. So the next slide will show you Thursday, May 25th, and just to be able to help patrons who maybe work during the day and can only come in the afternoon. This is an afternoon time, so I'm trying to accommodate different people's work schedule. I'd like to do one at like 5 in the morning next time and see how many people. The next one will be 5 in the morning and see how many people I get.
Just so the public knows, we're not allowed to go to those as board members.
Right. So the board did ask if they could come, and I said no. So it's just for the community members to be able to come and ask questions and give ideas. And it was we had lots of notes, and I did share it with the board, and I shared it with all the parents in the community. So if anyone is a community member and doesn't have access to that, I sent out what the topics were, so that the whole staff and all of our parents would know what topics were brought up. Thank you. We are doing, a few schools in our district do a little bit of a kindergarten roundup, and not all of 7 did that. So we are going to do a district date for a kindergarten roundup. And so it's, for some schools, it's not the first one they're doing, but it's our first annual district one that we're doing, so that we can have, help alleviate some anxiety, especially for first-time families who have kindergartners. We're going to do a small screener that will help us. We also are going to, little kindergartners get to see where their school is. They get to meet the kindergarten teachers. There'll be little cookies and stuff, so it helps.
Can we go to that?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I must be hungry. Keep going.
Last month we had the students that presented were not shy, and they walked right up to the board chair and said, "Can we have some of those cookies?" So she's moving the cookies. Okay, so the board is welcome to come, and we are going to do this first annual, and we're excited, and hopefully that'll give us better numbers and relieve anxiety for some first-time families. May 11th. A very quick update on our district safety task force. We had our meeting last night. For those that are new, I started here in July 5th. We had our first district safety task force meeting on July 11th. We met weekly for several hours until we started meeting, kind of knocked off some things, and then we got down to bi-weekly, and now we're down to monthly meetings. We have them at the district office. We have a set group, which I've shared out with the board and the community of who's on that group. I'm making sure that the board is aware. We've talked about this several times, but we're at the point now, after some of the statistics that we've been reviewing, we do after-action item reviews in the District Safety Task Force team. We talk about incidences that have happened across the country, things that have happened in our state, and then we do a debrief afterwards on what we can roll out to the admin, and then they roll out to their staff. As I reported last month, we finished our Move, Secure, and Defend training, all 11 schools. I was able to attend Sandpoint Middle Schools, which was the last one that they completed, the only one I was able to attend, 2.5 hours, and very involved in specific situational awareness for that school. This armed guard security position is going to be posted at the end of the week or next week. If you're interested in looking at the job posting, it's there. That's in draft form. It'll be finalized before we go out. This will be based, the personnel will be based out of Clark Fork, and they will be intermittently covering Hope and Northside Elementary. Now, because it will be a district personnel, they could conceivably go to any of our 11 schools or homeschool academy. But at this point, looking at statistics and based on incidences across the country with safety, our district safety task force team is recommended they start out and base at Clark Fork. Also, as the board knows, with the remoteness of Clark Fork, it really will help. 72% of incidences that happen with school violence are at a high school level, and Clark Fork is our farthest away from access to law enforcement. So we feel really strongly about that. The vetting, I would like to ask that you don't have to say right now, but I would like to have one board member participate in the interview process, and then one can be helping with the pre-screening, but I just want to limit it to only one board member on each of those 2 teams. So if you're interested, certainly let the clerk know on that. The vetting does have a very rigorous vetting. They have, and it's all in the job posting there, and I've already relayed that to you, but it's a very rigorous process to get through the vetting to be able to be recommended to the board for hire. The identified needs, I'm just going to say it, it's not comfortable to say, but I do want you to know we have had nearly almost 100 incidences of violence at schools this year. And we talked about it last night at the District Safety Task Force team. We feel very strongly as a team that really identifies Not that it identifies a need particularly in our district, but we want to be proactive and we want to be planning ahead. And we want our community to know that we are not waiting till something happens. We want to plan ahead. The need in the country is right now, we feel, is identified, even in our state. We just talked about some incidences in our state in Idaho, and we feel like this is the proactive and the right thing to do for our students. If you get asked about funding, we have grants that we're writing. There's brand new grants that just came out, the COPS from the federal government, COPS grants. We have vaping litigation payout that the board is aware of, that I'm going to, this money is perfectly used, aligned for that. And then safe and drug-free schools money. Between those three funding sources, we'll have enough to hire and arm the person and train, go through all of those processes. And then the last thing on District Safety Task Force is we really want to make sure that we come back at the end of the year. We did the safety survey in the beginning of the year. We would like to show some growth, that people are feeling more confident in some of the decisions we've made to try to help proactively protect schools. So we will be doing a staff and a parent survey at the end of the year to reassess that. Any questions on that? Okay.
No.
As I always put in the loop, I just want to remind everyone how wonderful our community relations liaison is. She was here, I don't know where she, oh, there she is, right there. So I'd like to thank her on how pretty and Eastery and wonderful this is. I always put in the link right here for the EduBlog, should everyone just want to look in here, and patrons or people across the country can loop right in there, no pun intended. I also wanted the staff to know and the board to know I shared the input. Anytime we have a policy that will affect staff or parents or students or patrons, we put it, the board asks me to go out and get input. And so I did request input for board policy 5328. We had 4 people that gave feedback. There was some very valid feedback though in those 4. Based on that, I made changes to the document. I am requesting that we just do this as a first read based on that staff input. I kind of changed the whole thing. It was going to be too messy, so I just would like to, I just started over at a first read. Sure. And I think that will address the issues that the staff brought up, and then the second read wouldn't be until May.
Okay. That's great.
That's it. Any questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I will, we're going to move into public comment, and we have Renee Lorden. Welcome. And you know there's 3 minutes for public comment.
I'm Renee Lorden. I teach 4th grade at Farmers as well, and I just wanted to share with you some fun things that we're doing with our ELA curriculum, which is aligning to our 4th grade standards. So instead of doing a written book report, our kids are doing t-shirt book reports, which shows all the elements of the book. They're doing the setting, they're doing the characters, their favorite quote, a picture of the front and a picture of the author, so you can see that this student went above and beyond, did a great job with this. And here's another one. A favorite is because of Winn-Dixie in 4th grade. Same thing, the kids really were engaged in this. They loved doing it. They wore their t-shirts, they presented to us, and I just wanted to share those fun things with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have Kristen Bucknor. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, yes, I'm Kristen Buckmiller, and I teach at Farming Sewell also. I teach in a multi-age program. It's called the ELP, and this year it's a 4th through 6th grade program. And I also wanted to share with you some work that the kids are doing. It is after spring break, so work is not easy to get done, and I think they would appreciate you thinking about summer starting now. But we are still doing work. yesterday, as a matter of fact, we were doing some math work, and in my classroom, because it's multi-age, I have kids with me up at the front who have instruction from me while other students are in the back, and they are doing independent work at that time. And my 5th graders and I were having a math talk about geometry, and one of the 6th graders who was working independently was listening in and then raised his hand. And usually I don't allow cross-group conversation because it can get quite off topic, but it looked like he had something really relevant to say. He said, "Can I help?" And I'm like, "Come on up," because I'd like to teach that. And I'm like, "Please." So he comes up and he sees exactly what I'm doing. He's got the pointer, he's explaining it. He did a master class on compound shapes. I couldn't even believe how great he did it. And, well, I could believe he did a great job. And he answered questions, and there are 2 students in the 5th grade who said, "I don't know, I still don't get it." And he walks away and he goes, "Yep, teaching is a hard job." So anyway, we are still working hard, getting things done. Then today we had writing, and for 6th grade we are starting our argument writing. And I passed out the little packet to get started, and the student goes, "This is my favorite. I love argument writing." Got the whole class engaged. Now all the 6th graders can't wait to argue in their papers. So really, really happy about that. So, you know, you could go on and on with anecdotes about what kids say. Books could be written, that's for sure. But I wanted to share with you more of a big project that we're working on. This is a writing project, and it's called All About Me. It's based on Becky Charbot's project that she does with 3rd graders. And it's a book that students write, and it tells about themselves. It's an autobiography. So I had a volunteer, she does this as well, who makes these covers. So I was fortunate enough that a volunteer made all of these for me for all of my students. Wow. So this is amazing. In 3rd grade, they do like a 5-chapter book, but this is 4th, 5th, and 6th, so we're doing 9 chapters. And some of the chapters are about their early years. I'm having them write a story about an event in their life so that they can do beginning. 3 minutes already?
It was 4 minutes already.
Well, thank you for telling me.
I love the project. It sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so they really enjoy it. So anyway, thank you so much.
That was great. So we are going to move right on to our budget presentation. And welcome to our CFO, Lisa Hall.
Good evening. Joint presentation.
And Superintendent Meyer, thank you.
Here we go.
At this time, I think we could collaboratively want to congratulate our new CFO is in the audience and has joined us. So Mr. Brian Wallace here, we just visually want to point him out and tell you. We are both very excited. I've worked with him for 6-7 years, and Lisa?
Let's see, I've known Brian professionally for about a decade, right?
Yeah.
First in Coeur d'Alene and in Lakeland. He's also had an extended presidency due to COVID for the Idaho School Business Officials Association, and we're beyond elated that he's joining the school district.
Welcome. Thank
So
you.
more to come in the future district update in the loop, but just wanted to visually be able to introduce him while everyone's here. So congratulations.
Let's see. So I want to start by recapping what I reviewed with the board in March, and this is very high level, but that will then launch us into our budget proposal this evening. So for the last, and including this year, the last 3 fiscal cycles, school school districts in Idaho have been paid on a special temporary rule through the state board to be paid on student enrollment versus what is in Idaho code to be paid on average daily attendance. And we will revert back to Idaho code in fiscal year 24. I anticipate that our school district will fall into protection. We've talked at length about what that funding mechanism is under the state foundation funding formula. So just for our district, I anticipate that will be a loss in state revenue of about $823,000. And many districts will fall into protection. I would use the word probably an abnormal number of districts will fall into protection next year because enrollment, well, historically has been about 5% over average daily attendance. That swing can be much higher, 10%, even up to 20% in some districts. And it's a self-funding provision. And right now the State Board of Education is anticipating it's about a 3% cost, and that will be another $823,000 of loss in state revenue next year. However, our new superintendent, Debbie Critchfield, has committed in the April State Board of Education meeting to look at the actual 88 average daily attendance rule, hoping to somehow soften this funding cliff for fiscal year 24. But that's at the end of April. Second, my projection is that our net increase in appropriation from the state over current will be about $3.2 million. That will bring our state funding to $31 million in fiscal year 24. That would represent about 70% of our general fund revenue next year, and that is a 9.7% increase over current. Also, in the appropriation for next year by the state, there will be an increase to what's called the career ladder. It's a funding portion, the largest portion of the state annual appropriation, and it's going to increase each what's called rung by $6,359. That will not change Idaho code, but it is expected that the starting Idaho teacher salary next year will be $47,477. This increase is only to general fund teachers, and of course we have about 230 general fund teachers and about 260 overall teachers. I would also point out that the federal government's fiscal cycle does not flush with both the state of Idaho and the school district cycle, so we have not even received our estimated allocations for the federal programs, most notably Title I, Title II, and the 2 special education IDEA-related programs. But we've also reviewed this at length over the last several years. We will have spent almost all of our ESSER funding. The third and final package is ARPA, and we'll carry forward about $45,000 in our ARPA funds outside of the HVAC programs, where those dollars will be expended this summer, and that's about $900,000 still remaining. Other things that are pending are health insurance renewal, which is well over 10% of our annual budget. We will receive from the state, what they call insurance trust, that increased this Friday, and our insurance committee, which is separate from the budget committee, will meet next Wednesday, hopefully, to finalize what the renewal will look like in our district. Also, teachers in Idaho have bargaining rights, and we expect to bring to the board in the May board meeting a teachers bargaining agreement to ratify. So all of this combined, and I shared this last month, is that we need to balance our budget under Idaho code, and that would mean a reduction of $1.6 million. Most importantly, pointing out that this strategically still would maintain our general fund reserves to balance future fiscal year budgets because we have an indefinite term supplemental levy at a fixed amount, and that is planned. We go to the next slide. So the next couple of slides are looking at the adopted budget for this fiscal year, comparing it to the recommendation here tonight for fiscal year 24, which starts July 1st, 2023. So it's expressed in new costs over current operational costs. So first with technology, would be an increase of $41,000, otherwise maintaining our current program, and that $41,000 is mostly tied to a position, half-time position that blended technology and teaching and learning in this fiscal year, and it's recommended to carry that forward. Under transportation, the most important thing would be buying one special education bus and also buying a enhanced routing and communication software system that would benefit not only the students and parents, but also more communication with the administration. Under facilities, we've been maintaining the current program, reminding the board that we do annually transfer $200,000 into a plant fund, and there would be 2 capital items that would be purchased, a new delivery van and a new plow and snow truck. Both of those fleet vehicles that are being replaced are well over 15 years old, and one, I believe, is not even operational at the moment. The next program is our child nutrition program. We've talked at length at our drop in free and reduced numbers and numbers of meals served. Overall, the state's free and reduced percentages are dropping, and in order to balance that budget, we would be transferring over current an additional projected $200,000. In our special education department, we'd be increasing costs by $64,000, and these would be centered on additional professional services. Then if we move to the teaching and learning department, we would be increasing that budget by $256,000. The nexus of that is an increase of $300,000 towards curriculum, bringing the curriculum budget in fiscal year 24 to $455,000. In our students' activities program, that would be an increase of $169,000. The bulk of that money would be to purchase 2, I don't know why they're called white buses, someone might weigh in on that, 2 white buses. They're smaller buses to transport teams and activities because rental coaches have become absolutely cost prohibitive, and we anticipate over the next several fiscal cycles actually to recoup those acquisition costs. Then we also, due to some dyslexia legislation from not this legislative session, but the fiscal year, the 22 legislative session, we will be adding a literacy lead coach, and this the training is required by law and will be supporting all staff. And then finally, we've always had, or for many, many fiscal cycles, we've had a contingency budget. This year it's $130,000, and we are going to bump that up to $340,000 next fiscal year.
And part of the reason that we are bumping that up has to do with this first line here. So these are reductions that we have in current staffing and programs. As Lisa, CFO Hall, said, we need to reduce. So she just talked about the additions and the changes. These are the reduction pieces. Again, I will remind the board, and if other people haven't heard this, there is a small budget team process that this has gone through. Then they presented to me. I've also met with the directors, the admin, district office, the different teams. So a lot of eyes and stakeholder input have been involved in this proposal. So in classified and certified, we are making some cuts. These are the cuts that we're doing. I would like you to know that as we're making cuts in both of these, when it says 7 classified FTE full-time equivalent is approximately 7 to 8 hours a day, so 35 to 40 hours a week is what that equates to. And then also here down on the certified, The 982 is equivalent to 12.27 certified. That includes certified and admin positions there. We first take the reductions based on attrition, people who are moving somewhere else, retirements, LOAs or leave of absences, and any enrollment reductions. So we did have to make some cuts at some of the schools based on low enrollment. That also stems from, if we have ESSER funds when they came in for social distancing, when the COVID was going on, when the ESSER funds were coming in, again, reminding you that 85% of our budget is on staffing. So those funds, and I can't speak to exactly, Lisa would have to, but in most districts, and I do believe that's what we did in this district as well, those funds went to help with the social distancing requirements.
Yeah.
This district stayed in person, same as the district I was in. When you're in person, we had to increase staffing, both certified and classified, so that you could increase the space between students, which required smaller, very small class sizes spread out throughout different parts of the building. So that now that we are depleting and our ESSER funds are done, we're, instead of precipitously going over the cliff and taking off all of them, there was, I believe, some reductions last year, reductions this year. And so that we're still in reasonable class sizes in this district. It's just that these funds need to be decreased based on us now coming out of that. If that makes sense. Question?
So these are ESSER cuts, basically? These were funded through ESSER dollars, mostly?
Right.
And I wasn't here, but I would say,
Yes.
Lisa can probably attest to this, I would say that that is how these extra staffing positions were funded.
So on the classified staff, that's 100% true. And on the certified staff, that is, I could get you that percentage, about, and probably at least 60% of that are due to basically new one-time ESSER.
And then I did have a question. You might get to it, so I hopefully I'm not asking a question that you'll answer in a minute. But
Okay.
the projected budget increases of the previous pages, where is that coming from? Is that, if we're cutting this from ESSER dollars we don't have anymore, how are we paying for that other stuff?
Right, so it's a blend of three things. The increased state appropriation of $3.2 million over current. Exiting staff, particularly on the teacher side, top attainable teachers versus entry-level teachers, and then the cuts that we're talking about here.
So, and just so if somebody retires and that they're at the very top and then you hire a new person, there's quite a bit of savings there.
Right. I'm just going to ask a quick question. I didn't add up those additions.
Right.
And looking at the reductions, and then looking at the state increases, do we end up with that 1.6 million cut overall?
It's actually going to be a little bit higher than
Okay.
that.
Okay.
When the small budget committee that we've now referred to made the recommendations to the superintendent, and then as the superintendent evaluated those, the superintendent found some other cuts that she wanted to follow through on.
Okay. Thank you.
Hence, just to answer that, when she said right here the contingency went up more than she typically has done in the last several years, I would rather not hire someone on and then have to not have the enrollment to sustain that teacher, and then a teacher has a job and we have somebody, I would rather
wait.
And we're not going to have to do a RIF because attrition, retirements, and leave of absences, we do not have to do a RIF, which is really important to me and the staff. But we are able to increase this contingency should enrollment skyrocket or bubble in an area. We have these funds to add staffing at that point, and I'm more comfortable staffing that way, if that makes sense.
That does.
So then if we transition to compensation and benefits, this is a recommended average. I do want to underscore the word average for anybody listening tonight or to this recording. Will be for the different categories of staff. an average increase between 8 and 10%. This is, again, aligned with our strategic plan of recruiting and retention, and then, of course, particularly difficult labor market conditions and inflationary current pressures. I mentioned earlier that there is an infusion of new state dollars, that one of the largest new line or additions is to increase the rungs for the teacher career ladders by over $6,000, and in order to meet that expectation alone, we have to increase the base salary for over 8%. Then I mentioned that we put in a placeholder of a 10% health insurance increase that mirrors what's happened at the state level. We should know that exact dollar amount this Friday. And so these blended costs are an additional $3.3 million. And then finally, of course, in the strategic plan that the board adopted last month, one of the biggest priorities in our district are facilities. It's also the very first bullet in my management discussion and analysis report for year over year in our audit, that what hamstrings Lake Pend Oreille School District's financial soundness is the conditions of our facilities and the inability to fund them. So there's nothing in this budget that addresses those facility needs. I would just, I guess, point out that there was a very significant property tax bill, House Bill 292, that passed. It's ongoing money, and in the first year, it's meant on the taxpayer side, and then through some different funding channels, there'll be property tax relief. They're estimating of $355 million, of which directly public school districts are anticipated to receive between $115 to $130 million. The language, it's a 20-page bill, and the language is conflicting for districts that have indefinite term supplemental levies. We're one of 6 in the state, and I believe we're one of 2 in the state that do not have a bond, and that's especially important, and so we are researching our options on if we could benefit facility-wise from this new money in House Bill 292. And then I think the other thing I just want to underscore in closure is our process. I think is very inclusive in developing our budget. It starts right after our audit is delivered at the end of October. I personally go out to all the schools and to every department to discuss sort of the financial condition of the district and what we project is going to happen during the budgeting cycle. The next thing that happens are the department heads have 2 months to develop their requests that are then brought to the CFO, the superintendent, to be reviewed. Concurrently, I always put a very hard deadline of the end of January with coming up with a revenue forecast from the state. And we start our small budget committee, which brings together all the different categories of staff to make a recommendation to our superintendent. We really try to do this, particularly if we're in a budget cutting cycle. One, just to give staff a courtesy before spring break that the position would be eliminated, and 2, for a myriad of other reasons, administratively to plan. And I think that's our content, except to say that as we discussed last meeting, it's our expectation that if the board has more questions, that we would ask for a second board meeting in April so that we could be prepared to ratify the negotiated agreement in our May meeting.
Yeah. And our intent is to review the finalized budget in our May meeting, and right?
Well, the budget would be adopted and I've notified the county that it's going to be the meeting in June, but it allows on the back end for administratively to put it into the software and those
Yep.
kinds of things.
So with that, please, trustees, if you do have questions this next week or two, reach out personally through email to get answers to whatever questions you might have. And then if we need a second meeting, we need to know within the next week.
Or now, you can feel free to ask
Yeah,
us
ask questions now, but if
while
things
we're in
occur to
the
you-
public meeting is great as well.
Yeah. I do not. I made notes and I feel comfortable with what I've seen there. I was adding up a few things as we went along, and I appreciate the depth of discussion on these topics. Is there any other questions?
My question is not, I don't think it has anything to do with what is already put together. It's just, when will we start to formulate some type of plan or committee for our facilities?
Oh, that's a great question.
It is.
So with the strategic plan, I talked to the P12 team and the operations team, and we are going to the district safety task force team. I'm going to put that request out through the principals at our May meeting. They will send out information to the parents. They will each recommend at least 2 or 3 parents from their school, and then I'll put an all call out to the community in May, probably mid-May, so that we can have our first meeting right when the end of school is coming, so that people who have graduation and that. So we'll start with our meetings in June, and then we'll come up with a schedule. But since the board has developed, tasked us with the subcommittee, it will be a citizens group. They'll elect a president and somebody vice president and somebody to take notes. Myself and the new CFO will be there. We've done it before to have kind of a blueprint. Not that it can't be changed, but we'll keep minutes. Those will be shared with the public. So we'll start those.
And as I recall, trustees were not actively part of that subcommittee, so that there was no one trustee who had access to information that was not presented to the board as a whole.
The board should not be on their own subcommittee.
Exactly.
But we share everything. We share everything with you, and then certainly people, not just parents, but community members, grandparents, taxpayers, business owners. So we want to make sure that we have enough of every type of person on the committee.
Okay. You can report back to us in May on that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you both.
Great, thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. At this point in the meeting, I would hear a motion to approve consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. And now we have if I am reading this correctly, we're going on to board action items, and we have an offsite prom request.
No.
Did I go to the right spot? Don't tell me no. Who's presenting on this?
Offsite. Yep. That's it.
Offsite. Oh, hello.
Yep, you guys
Oh,
are up.
hello, you're up.
You're up. Sorry, I was just double checking because somebody said yes and somebody said no.
Well, he
so-
said no, and I thought it meant I was in the wrong spot on the
No, I was just
agenda.
saying no.
He's just
The,
being
thing
smart.
and the-
Okay. So I'm not in the wrong spot, and welcome.
Oh, I'd like to introduce Alex Manning. He's our ASB president, and Casey Reed, she's our senior president. And it is
Welcome.
fourth quarter, and they are seniors, so they have a request for offsite prom.
Good evening, everyone. As Chief Lisa said, my name is Casey Reed, and I'm the senior class president at Sandpoint High School. And we have on class of 2023, I'm coming forward tonight to request to have prom offsite at the Hartwood Center, located at 615 Oak Street, right across from Evans Brothers, if you're unfamiliar with the area. The senior class has decided on the Hartwood Center because of the convenience of location and accessibility of parking, and the venue is ADA compliant. The Hartwood Center is large enough with a capacity cap of 400. This venue has been used by Sandpoint High School in previous years, most recently by the graduating class of 2018. The associated cost of the facility will be $1,350, paid for by the class of 2023. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have following it if you receive the information.
very thorough. I was gonna ask, when did you last do it? But you already said 2018. Is there any questions from other trustees?
No.
Then I will entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the Sandpoint High School class of 2023 to host prom off-site at the Heartwood Center at 615 Oak Street in Sandpoint on June 3rd from 7 to 10 p.m.
I second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That was a stress-free presentation. Thank
Have
you
fun.
and good luck
Be
at
careful.
prom. Be safe. Oh, good. Okay, so we have approval for bid for 3 new passenger Type C school buses, and we have James Kaler, our transportation director. Hello.
Good evening.
James.
Hello.
Oh, you guys can stay if you want. Okay, James, you're up.
Okay, so the Transportation Department is requesting approval to purchase 3 new Type 71 passenger buses, Type C. We received 4 bids that were opened today. The low bid from Western Mountain Bus Sales was $149,369 per bus. I'm requesting that you approve that bid from Western Mountain Bus Sales.
I do have one question. What did we estimate in this?
Approximately 145.
So it's
We
pretty
were-
close to
We were
what
pretty
we-
close,
yeah.
yeah, to the estimate. We were a little bit over, but
Thank you. I couldn't remember exactly, but I appreciate that. Are there other questions?
You used Harlow's last time?
we were with Harlow's won the bid last year, yes. Yeah. They were considerably higher this year.
Well, I know
Come way up.
costs have gone up in so many areas, and I'm seeing it in bus purchases also.
It's, yes, it's.
And I know it's even month to month, like the quicker you're on it, things change.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If not, then I will entertain a motion on this.
I make a motion to approve the bid from West. I make a motion to approve the bid for 3 new 71 passenger Type C school buses from Western Mountain Bus Sales.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Are there other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a good night.
I know. Sorry to throw you off. We will move on. We have a math curriculum adoption, and I would invite up our teaching and learning director, Andra Murray, as well as inviting a team up with her. And since right after this is another curriculum item, I'm imagining you'll.
Thank you so much. We'll share speaking responsibilities, and we also have some staff and parents joining us who are just standing with the group and don't have a particular slide. But
Okay.
thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
We are here just to share briefly about our review of K-5 math materials over the last year. And you have seen this process before, but important to note that our committee was made up of 50% staff, 50% parents and patrons. And for you to know that Idaho, as you heard, updated their standards last year, and so we were working from those new standards out. And also to note that the last formal math review was in 2016, and that contract has expired. The committee just wanted you to know also that increasing rigor, hands-on opportunities, and fluency or math practice were some of our priorities, and we're recommending a comprehensive math program for kindergarten through 5th grade called Eureka Math Squared, and you'll hear more about it. The process involves really getting our committee together first and learning about the standards. We think it's really important to work from the State Department of Education out, and for our community to know that we teach those standards as outlined by the State Department of Ed. So we always start there in learning about the standards together. And we go through a process of looking at various curriculums. And then in the end, we come and we think it's important that we score those again with an evaluation tool developed by the State Department of Ed, added to by our local community, so that we're using a third point, an objective scoring process. We talked a little bit about just those new standards from the state, and the state identified the most major work. So that was a piece that was really important to our committee, that what they are saying is the major work of kindergarten through 5th grade is also prioritized in our curriculum. And I will introduce Coach Lisa McElroy, who will talk about the next portion.
Thank you, excited. I first want to thank our teachers and our parents on our committee. This is a tremendous lift, piloting programs. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. Our teachers have worked so hard. Our parents have really donated a lot of time and energy, and so I just want to thank them for their work too. Our minds are on and our hands are on. So I have a pleasure of introducing kind of just that deep dive. We had Kathy Beals from the State Department give us a presentation of what the standards look like from kind of that 10,000 foot view. And then it was time to get to work. So this process, I'll briefly describe what it looked like. We developed grade level teams, and within those grade level teams, we gave copies of each grade level standards. And you can see the mathematical practices called out. The standards themselves really clarified this process. We dove in deep to each grade level with parents. You can identify here by the square shape, that's the major work, followed by the supporting work and the additional work. We wanted parents to feel comfortable with this language, and so we related it to the analogy, we're building a mathematical house. The major work is the house. The supporting and additional work, finalize that with the roof and the windows and doors. So we wanted to make sure we were comfortable with that process, but then in addition to that, we wanted feedback from our committee. So we asked each team to say, in addition to this great framework for mathematical practice, what's important to you as parents, what's important to you as teachers, and as advocates on behalf of your student or your child, what's important to them. And this was the list after synthesizing that feedback that was developed. It's important to maintain a level of rigor. It's also important that math is relevant and in our daily life. We want it to be fun, hands-on, engaging. We recognize the value of consistent daily fluency practice. We want a curriculum that we're looking for to be flexible. If students need more time with a certain concept, we want the material that we're looking at to provide that flexibility. And last, we want it to be differentiated. Some kids learn visually, some kids learn tactily, some kids learn auditorily. We want a curriculum that really helps every style of learner. So with that, our vision was developed. How now are we going to evaluate a program? What we did first is we went to the State Department of Education and looked at their mathematics evaluation tool. It was a 21-page document, and we thought, we've got to pare that down. So our goal was to maintain the integrity of that document, but then also layer on our local priority. And so what we did then is we formed our Lake Pend Oreille School District's mathematics evaluation tool or rubric. So the next slide shows you the 5 criteria used to score programs. The first of which is indicators of quality, followed by standards of mathematical practice, alignment to Idaho math standards, mathematical instructional practice, and then finally the assessment and in line to what we call MTSS, but it's a tiered system of support for students that includes extension and also remediation. This became a 5-page rubric, so still a very robust scoring document. All right, so I love this slide because at this point, now that we know the vision and we know how we're going to evaluate it, we know what we're looking for. So we like to relate trying on a coat to trying on math programs. We've got great programs to pick from, but using what we're looking for, which one do we think is going to fit us the best? Which one's going to fit our teachers the best? Which one's going to fit our students, our local context the best? And so from that, what does that look like for teachers and parents? So for teachers, every teacher received what we call kickoff training for each program. How does it work? Followed by all the materials, both the digital materials and the print materials. We heard our committee loud and clear, hands-on learning was important. We wanted to make sure they had all the things, all the hands-on materials to support the doing of math. And then we wanted them to pilot each program with what we call in the educational world as much fidelity as possible. What that really means is, did you put your hands all the way into the pockets? Did you try the button and the zipper? What about the hood? When it gets hot, what can you do with it? We wanted to explore every part of the program, so we really had an in-depth understanding of what it offers both our teachers and our kids. Our parents and patrons, they also were provided digital access to all materials, all grade levels. They were provided an opportunity to check out print materials at the district office. And then, excitedly, they were also offered an opportunity to come into the schools, into classrooms, and see the programs in action in classrooms. My favorite part is our teachers. We have first Amy Scottstad from Washington. She's going to start sharing her experience with Eureka Math Squared in her 5th grade classroom, followed by Truth. So this shows a year-long curriculum overview, which is like the big picture of across the grade levels. Each grade level has 6 modules with a set number of lessons per module. And it's kind of hard to see, but at the bottom, module 5 in kindergarten shows addition and subtraction. And then that continues all the way to 5th grade. Our module 2 is addition and subtraction with fractions, which ties into the next slide. So our committee was invited to observe Eureka Squared in action. So on the same day, they visited a kindergarten classroom and my 5th grade classroom. Both of us were modeling subtraction using the number bond model. The number bond shows the total at the top and then the parts, so circle at the top and circles at the bottom. In kindergarten, they were modeling subtracting whole numbers, so 8 subtract 3, and they were finding the unknown. So for addition, you can do part plus part equals total. Subtraction would show total subtract part equals part. And in 5th grade, we were subtracting fractions. So we were subtracting a mixed number from a whole number. So 5 subtract 2 3/4 is what we were modeling in 5th grade. So it's just interesting in the same day, we were both modeling number bonds. So from kindergarten, introduction, all the way to 5th grade.
You can take
Okay.
all
All right, so I'm Therese Lupins. I'm 4th grade out Southside Elementary. I'm a show and tell kind of girl. The first thing that I'll just touch on is the technology component that goes with the program, goes with any math program curriculum. There are online presentation slides for teachers, and then there's online assessments as well. The hands-on material I find very helpful and not too overwhelming. You know how they have just buckets and buckets and buckets of stuff to help you with your curriculum and teaching. This is pretty streamlined. It's not complicated, and this is a very helpful, useful tool, ordinary. And my students are learning fractions by using the ruler, and equality with their measurement on the lines, as well as their tape diagrams. Simple, but very, very important. And another component that I really, really like, and I'm just going to pass these out to the board members.
You can share.
Okay. All right. So there is a learning book for the students, and then there is also what's called an applied book for parents. And I don't know how many parents I have come across that tell me, I cannot teach math. But with this curriculum, they can, because it gives them the same script that I would have as a teacher. Not only that, but when a kiddo goes away for 2 weeks in February with their parents to Hawaii, and their parents say, what are you going to be teaching my child while they are gone? I can send that applied book with them so that they can learn. So that to me was big, because now my parents can teach the lessons that their children are not getting while they're gone. Also, the books that the kiddos use are clear, they're not complicated, and they have to actually learn how to tear out pages from a book without tearing the page. That's a life skill. It is so hard, especially for the boys, okay? And then this is the teacher handbook, and it is easily followed and easily to read. It reads easy for everybody, I think, even someone's coming in to substitute for my class. So those are the components of Eureka Math, and I had a great pleasure working with this team, trying this math out, and my students loved it.
All right. So now the fun part begins. The rubric that I mentioned earlier, we're going to be putting into play. You can kind of see that same rubric on the screen behind our lovely teachers here, but they were in teams. This process took hours. The reason it took hours is because we don't just take the rubric and score. We take the rubric and then we dive in and find the evidence to support the score. And so when we talk about this being a robust scoring process, we have to agree on the score. If Andrew and I'm saying a 2 and she's saying a 1, we have to then go in, find evidence, and then whose score does the evidence support. So it is a robust scoring process, as seen in this picture here. Excited to say that Eureka Square Math earned an overwhelming majority recommendation by our committee. Not only that, it was the highest scoring on our evaluation rubric program. All right, next slide. And then finally, after our team had reached consensus, it was time to go to our committee and community input. You can see K through 5 laid out for community. We offered an evening opportunity and a morning opportunity. It was suggested previously that we also are flexible for parents that maybe just need an appointment, so we offered that opportunity as well. The next slide. And super excited to introduce Erin. I told her we should crown her as she walks up here. A parent that's willing to talk about how excited she is to participate in a math adoption deserves.
I mean, who doesn't love math?
Take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a proud parent of 2 exceptional children at Mount Elementary. What was really eye-opening for me about this process, and what made me wish that every parent had the opportunity to do it, is really getting to go through those math standards on that first day that we met, as a committee. It really gave me a deeper appreciation for our teachers and highlighted the importance of choosing a curriculum that will make it as easy as possible for them to teach our children to those standards, and for parents and caregivers to provide the support from home. I did want to say thank you to Andrew and Lisa for their leadership through this, and their organizational skills, and their commitment to transparency. It was really a great process, and as you can see from the other parents and patrons who participated, we were super excited to recommend Eureka, and we hope you agree. Turn it back over to Andrew to talk dollars and cents.
Thank you. In the end, we wanted you to know that the recommendation for K-5 for a 6-year contract for our students comes in just under $400,000. Important to note that we negotiated down almost $75,000 off the initial quote to be as fiscally responsible as possible, and we've written outside grants to fund the hands-on tools for every classroom. That came in at almost $37,000, so we are seeking grant funding to also take that bottom line down as far as we could. We did the math, and this total works out to about $40 per student per year. So we really thank you for the opportunity to present our findings, and we're happy to answer questions. I know anyone on the team would field those.
I have a question about math curriculum. K-5, what happens to the 6th graders? They're roped into a curriculum that flows forward to 7 and 8?
6 and up, all the way through Algebra 2, use big ideas.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes.
Geraldine wants to know if you have the answer key.
I already started work on my do trustees have any other questions?
Not for me.
This is an action item, so I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve Eureka Math Squared for K-5 math curriculum adoption as presented.
I second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? I would just say that we are so grateful to the work put in, because I can't imagine putting in that amount of time and still doing what we're doing, but I appreciate and applaud the work you are doing. And now I will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye. I'll say I have witnessed what
they're
I've done it, and it is tough.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And that motion passes. Thank you all. Thank you, team.
Good job,
Yep. So I imagine Andra's staying.
She's
not. Oh, Casey.
McLaughlin's coming up, but Lisa McElroy's staying.
Lisa's staying, and Casey McLaughlin is up.
Catherine.
To talk to us about science curriculum adoption. Yes. Middle school. Yes.
Middle school. So that's where your 6th grade.
Thank you,
Six,
teachers.
7, 8. Thank you.
Thank you, teachers, for coming and staying late. Thank you.
We have a new crew now.
Even though our 6th grades are in elementary schools, they're considered
It's part
middle
of that.
school.
Thank you for clarifying that.
That's why a lot of districts are going to true middle schools because of the.
Yeah, because the way the curriculum.
I'm on your page, Mr. Penrose.
Okay, we have a presentation. You're on.
We do. So I'm Casey McLaughlin, I'm the Secondary Director of Education. And I just want to let everybody introduce themselves really quickly. Of course, you know Lisa, instructional coach.
Hi, I'm Sean Lyon. I teach both 7th grade and 8th grade science at the middle school.
I'm Renee Megan, and I teach 6th grade at Carmen State.
Barlow, and I was a patron participant.
So each of these wonderful people, along with several others from the middle school and 6th grade, and then several patrons also joined us. So in this curriculum review and adoption. So a little bit of our background. Go ahead to the next one. There we go. So we do have, according to state law, we do have 50% of our staff and 50% of patrons and parents have to be a part of the process. Our committee really responded to what was really, the voice of everyone going into this process, and that was hands-on science. Science is fun, science should be experimental, science should be hands-on. So that was a big push of the committee. There are new and revised science standards, which pushed us out a little bit further than we had hoped this year. We actually started this process. Andrew started this process, I think, 4 years ago, almost 3 or 4 years ago. We had started to review science, but every year we put a hard stop on it because the state was still in review of the science standards. And so luckily those have been finalized. And we do have a new science assessment in grade 11. It has been in grades 5 and 8 the last years, and then in grade 11 now there's one as well, so starting last year. And then our last formal science review was actually in 2006.
Ouch.
So it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while, and of course, that's a long time. So, okay, perfect. And then so our committee proposal, we of course, number one, want to increase hands-on science and cooperative problem solving by adopting a comprehensive science curriculum, which Smithsonian science for grades 7th and 8th, and then one kit for each 6th grade teacher out of Smithsonian. And then the second thing was to adopt a computer-based program with on-demand access to all Idaho standards to supplement and support background knowledge, and that is Generation Genius, which is the second part. The reason for that, just a quick background, the reason for that is because we know that 6th grade teachers, 7th grade teachers, 8th grade teachers, it's just that extra layer of support with the standards and with everything we do. So the process, and this is a familiar slide from last time, so I'm not going to jump into this a lot, but really we took our team, and of course you go through the entire process and you try out a couple different curriculums. In our case, we tried out 2 separate curriculums, and then you end up at a process where it's very robust. People try out everything, they dive into the process pretty deeply. We allow people to jump in both the online access as well as hands-on with students, and you get to the point where you make a recommendation. So.
All right. Okay. I'm hoping part of this process we remember from last year with the K-5 science adoption, so we'll quiz you in a minute. All right, we started this process, again, same as math, looking at the State Department's documents that highlight from that 10,000 foot view, what are the standards changes. So you can see those standards changes from a global perspective here, revised standards to provide, for example, balance of politicized content. What that looks like in the standards is not only do we want to focus on a negative impact, but we also want to highlight a positive impact. So that was the balance there. The next slide Shows you, again, this three-dimensional, we call this the 3D framework for science instruction. It begins with that authentic phenomenon, sickle cell would be an example, followed by the disciplinary core idea, that's the what you're learning, the science and engineering practices is the do, and then the cross-cutting concepts is the thinking. The standards themselves have that framework built in. You can see them highlighted. Here's an example of a middle school life science standard. Develop and use a model to do what? To describe why structural changes in genes called mutations that are located on chromosomes may affect proteins that then have either a harmful benefit or neutral effect in the structure and function of an organism. So this is one of the standards that our 7th grade students are working in their classrooms. All right.
Sorry, I was still reading it.
It's a fun one. All right, after diving into the standards, and let me just highlight really quick, 6th grade in our district is physical science, 7th grade is life science, and then 8th grade is earth science. So we divided into some table groups, and our teams, in addition again to the research around the standards and how they're written, what's important to you as parents, you as teachers, and you as advocates on behalf of your students and your children. And this was the list that we synthesized out. Number 1 on everybody's list was hands-on and engaging. We also want a real-world application. We want something that requires group work and collaboration. We're recognizing the need to get back to that problem solving together. We want to highlight the scientific processes. What does it look like to conduct an experiment or even design an experiment or a model? We also surveyed our 6th grade teachers and sent out a global survey to our middle school parents because we wanted to know what was important to them as well. And so the next slide, I caution you, it's a little visually overwhelming. This is our vision, right? So you can see that three-dimensional framework in the middle. There's that sickle cell phenomenon example. But then highlighted in yellow was the will of our committee. Hands-on, requiring group work, real-world application, science processes. Our 6th grade teachers needed to make sure that we include curriculum with training. They need the supplies. No more going to the Walmart at 11 o'clock at night. The supplies that are ready to go. We need to be cognizant of time. We also heard back from parents that we want our kids to love science. We love science as kids. We want our kids to love science. And we want our kids we want to limit screen time. We want them to use a book rather than being on a screen. So this was sort of our vision with everybody's voice heard. And so then it begs the question, how will we evaluate this, right? So we've selected the evaluation tool from the State Department of Education that has 3 criterion. The first is explaining the phenomenon. The second is those 3 dimensions that we mentioned previously. And then the third is the assessment. Does the assessment assess each component of the standard? So that was our rubric that we decided to utilize for this process. Again, you're going to see the coat analogy. It's time to try these programs on. Teachers received, again, the kickoff training, all the materials, both digital and print, as well as the kits with the hands-on materials like circuit boards, beads. You'll hear more about that stuff in a minute. And then again, with the goal of piloting each program with as much fidelity so that we know all of the things and how they fit. Our parents and patrons were given access to both digital and print materials, and then also an opportunity to come on site, both in the 6th grade setting and also at the middle school to see what these programs look like in action. All right, so up next is Renee. She's going to go ahead and share just what Smithsonian is and then what her piloting experience was at Brown.
So the Smithsonian curriculum is all based on investigations, so it's in-depth science investigations, and the students are the scientists themselves. So they are developing their own wonderings, their own questions, their own investigations, which then encourages them to then produce their own data as well, and then eventually graph that and see those results. Students as scientists collect and present everything, and they use real science materials. So one really key component, because both for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we wanted the students to have less screen time, is the books that came with Smithsonian. And another really great thing that we loved about it is that for the books, you only get enough so that students have to work in groups or partners. So it's a very collaborative process, which is the same as being a scientist in the real world. One other great thing is that the online materials offer accessibility to all of the reading. So in order for many students, if you have to differentiate or have to provide more resources and supports, that's all available online as well. But the students are working out of the books in teams at all times, and they're working through an investigation, which is really key, following directions and so forth. The other thing is that all of the science materials, it felt like you were being a real scientist. We weren't just giving paper clips, but when you opened up the kits, there were circuit boards, there was the copper wire we needed to create the motors, so everything was there as well, which was really important. The lessons, and for 6th grade this was really important, were about 50 minutes, but then also the Smithsonian rep was able to show us how to break it into 45-minute chunks to fit within 6th grade. And then as a whole, it scored highest on our 3D rubric. So in 6th grade, our essential question for one of our lessons was, what is electricity and how is it measured? We had multiple investigations going because at Farman we did it as a team. So we had all 65 6th graders working together in different stations. And so we were running 2 different investigations. One, the relationship between batteries and current, and then investigation 2.3 was measuring and investigating voltage. So they were putting together circuits, they were figuring out why the circuits weren't working. Another great thing about this is that when they were like, I don't know what's happening, my and other teachers' role was to say, well, you should go back and read through your procedures and figure it out. And then they'd be like, oh, well, my switch isn't shut. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And they're like, oh, now the light bulb's on. I'm like, oh, I wonder. And so they did a lot of that investigating themselves, and then were suddenly like, oh, why is my voltage different with series versus parallel? I'm like, I don't know, what do you think? So they were highly engaged, and it was amazing throughout all of these investigations. We had multiple stations happening, and there were no behavioral or student issues throughout any of it, because they were so engaged in gathering the data. Another thing with 6th graders is they're opinionated, and we told them that they were piloting science curriculum. So we surveyed them, and so this next piece is, the first curriculum we tried was there was a lot more reading, and there was a lot of information with it. So that is where, in the second survey, you can see the difference in their responses. So with Smithsonian, they said it's hands-on, but I feel like I'm learning and understanding more than the previous curriculum. It's not all reading and more hands-on science. You can already see a trend within 2 responses. The directions are clear, and they have safety warnings first before the lesson, which I was glad to see they were reading those. It was more hands-on, it had more projects to do, and you can actually do the work and not just look at the book and figure it out from there. So right there we saw right from our 6th graders that they loved the hands-on component and also felt like they were learning from that. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sean Lyons, the middle school 7th and 8th grade teacher.
So here in 7th grade, actually the standard that Lisa had put up earlier was the standard that the 7th graders were working on. Here, what they were doing is that they're going through, and this lesson was really cool, in this whole series of how Smithsonian set up the whole process, and throughout the entire unit was really cool, and really got the students thinking about how can our bodies change, and what does our DNA do, and how do we get messages throughout our body. So on the far left picture over here, you can see what they had to do is that they had to copy down a sequence of amino acids inside of our DNA. And then to take that and actually get messages to our body, we talked through, and Smithsonian went through and it described how, okay, you actually have to get messenger RNA to go out to your organelles to actually go through and make proteins so your body can actually work. So the second column over there, they had to look through and they had to use a chart to go through and actually transcribe the DNA into messenger RNA. And then finally over there on the far right side where you can see all the C's, then they actually had to make proteins out of that RNA. So once this goes to the ribosomes, now we start making proteins, and then that's how we can actually start to look at traits. All of our traits are built up, and they're designed to look, they're all designed by the proteins that make them up. So what's happening here, we're looking at the traits that these organisms have, but how do we actually get those traits? And looking at the sequence of proteins that they're going through, they can actually say, oh, this sequence right here, like the yellow, the red, and then the blue, oh, that gave this person blue eyes. So they were able to look at the DNA, how that transcribes over into a protein, and then actually say, oh, this series of proteins is what makes you look like how you look. So when we look at this, the next step of this lesson was to actually look at mutations. And so we're looking at the DNA sequence and how they had to go through multiple different mutations to see how that actually changes the DNA and changes the proteins. So as you see here, some of the results can come out to be harmful. You can have a bad mutation. Some of them can be benign, which they do nothing to you. And then some of them can be beneficial for you. So they're looking at this sequence here, and they actually had to go through and it'd say, okay, the third green amino acid you had in there changes, and now it's going to be adenosine instead of guanine. And so they had to look at that and then see how it changed the protein in the end. And then the cool thing is they see the protein change, and they go, oh, that just changed from blue eyes now to green eyes. So they could actually see how those mutations would affect a creature in the end. So as they build through these lessons, and the way the Smithsonian's set up there, is that they're building this knowledge as they go through, so that in the end, all of a sudden they can say, oh, that makes sense how, okay, you make this little change back here, and then that affects a creature or organism in the end. And so after they did this lesson, they built creatures, and they went through and actually had to look at a bunch of different traits and how those mutations went through and changed them after the mutation occurred. So that was the 7th grade one. The 8th grade one, we're in Earth Science here. With the Earth Science, this unit we're looking at had to do with volcanoes. And this lesson is actually a really cool one because this is one that is actually scientists are doing in Yellowstone right now, and they've been monitoring this for a lot of years. So what they're doing here, you can see we have the 2 students here on the left, and what they're doing is that they're monitoring how ground changes when volcanic activity is occurring below the ground here. In this, they use flour in little dishes, and then it's kind of hard to see, but there's little stakes that are sticking out of there. And so what they're doing, and what they had to do, one student would blow up a magma chamber, which was a balloon underneath their little piece of land, and then they had to measure and they had to monitor how those little stakes would be moving. And so we're bringing in the math and we're bringing in the graphing into this, so that they actually have to like plot out and prove, okay, this stake is moving by this much. Now when the magma chamber recedes, they've let the air out of the balloon, how much does that affect the ground? And so what they're doing is that they're using actual science that geologists do to actually go through and prove, okay, this is the information that actual geologists get, this is how we can use this in models to actually prove some of the things that we actually see. They then went forward in, sorry, back on the last one still. Then with this one, they went through and then they're looking at volcanic activity, and they're looking at how does the volcanic interaction change the environment, and then also how do we plan as a society to actually, if some volcanic event happens, can we prepare for that? So it has that real world application too with the preparation of it. And like I said, it's a really cool thing because this is currently happening in Yellowstone right now, where they've been monitoring that since about the 80s. And so they got to look at that too. The next one here, this is the additional curriculum that Casey had been talking about earlier. What is Generation Genius? Generation Genius is an online platform that the middle school's been using here for a couple of years. Dr. Jeff here, he's made a series of videos, and all of these videos pertain to different standards, and it really touches based on all of the standards that we cover in our Idaho core standards. Now with this, the cool thing about it, it's a lot of them are quick videos, and then they have a lesson background behind them. So these are great lessons for extensions for students. These are great lessons to introduce topics to the students. This is really phenomenon based, where they go through, they show a phenomenon, they show something cool in the environment happens, and then they go back and they explain how does that phenomenon happen. They use scientific vocabulary in there. They have a lot of different links. They have lessons. They have tests and quizzes that they can go through as well, so that you can monitor the progress of the students and kind of monitor their understanding as they go through here. At the end of each one of these lessons, they have a hands-on activity, a DIY activity that you can do. Some of them you can do at home. Some of them probably should be done in classroom, especially with middle schoolers. So, but it's really cool because they have those opportunities for these students to actually go through and do more hands-on lessons. They're really quick and really fun.
Thank you.
And back to Lisa.
Actually, thanks, John. Great. All right, so in these images, you're looking at the scoring process. So just like Sean and Renee shared with you their experience, we did that with our parents and patrons when we came back to score the material. We have a couple guests join us. Dr. Meyer was great. She joined a group, and then even Mr. Penrose popped in and participated in some of that discussion. Again, we use that three-dimensional screener, scoring guide, and then also providing the evidence within the curriculum, student samples, data to support that scoring as well. So I'm happy to announce that
It's there.
Smithsonian earned an overwhelming majority recommendation by the committee. It's also the highest scoring program on our scoring guide. So with that, our next step was to seek community input. So I'm going to pitch it back to Casey.
Sure. So we had a couple different opportunities for community to come in, and that is the next step in the process. And we want to make sure that we stagger them so people can make it in if they have concerns or questions. And so you can see we did one in one evening and then one in the morning. And then we opened up by appointment with Lisa. And we didn't have a patron take up on that, which was good. And you can just see we had laid everything out. So Generation Genius on one side and then Smithsonian on the other, so everybody could come in and see it. And this is just an example of one of the kits right here of kind of some of the things that come in there. So here are some of the quotes from people that came in and left just some feedback for us. And so the first one, love the emphasis on hands-on learning. Please continue to fund this. I love the hands-on, great visual, student-driven approach with investigations driving questions. There are great connections in the text to everyday history, etc. This one was interesting. Actually, I had several conversations with this patron. The good quality hands-on activities the students will get to use are great. Also the fact that there are very few questionable topics covered in the materials. Those are the ones you and I talked about. That patron actually asked me several different questions just about some very relevant topics right now that in science and everything else, and was really concerned about what are students learning, and are they learning X, Y, and Z, and what are they learning about. So we sat down with the curriculum, and he and I spent quite a bit of time going through the books and going through it all, and he was very satisfied and very happy with what we had actually chosen with the Smithsonian. So, and now I'm going to turn it over to Catherine.
Yeah, so I was very excited to be part of this. I do love science. And as was mentioned before, the whole process was very well organized, very informative. We got the resources we needed online. I remember I was doing some of my review online over Christmas and had a few concerns. You know, one of them was because I was kind of digging into professional resources, and I sent kind of a lengthy message to Lisa, and she immediately wanted to set up a meeting with Casey and her and I, and addressed my concerns, which was great. And expressed appreciation for me looking at the things. And I guess one of the things that I walked away with was, there are topics where there's going to be some gaps, and the teachers have to do some extra work in order to bring it to their students. And it was just like, wow, when are they going to do that? How do they have time to do that? So that to me was a key thing, and I just would urge you guys to continue to support teachers however they need to do that. And my only suggestion was to provide maybe an outline, because I think some of the parents didn't know what to do, and even me, it's like, am I being an overachiever, or am I doing minimum, or what am I doing here? So that was my suggestion, maybe an outline that says what would be ideal.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Catherine.
So the overall cost, $217,000, $532, and actually 1 cent. So that is the overall cost of this program. So we would open it up to any questions that you have for myself or anyone on the committee.
Yeah,
I got a question. The kits, how reusable are those items? Because this is a contract for the curriculum for how many years?
Yeah, it's 6 years.
And so does the kit last 6 years, or do we have to?
Great question.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
The majority of it is reusable, and then you have a certain term.
So physical science and earth science kind of lend themselves to like non-consumable materials, and we're hoping to kind of tap into some of the Packer plaques to restock some of our sand for earth science. Where we really need to renew is in life science. The best part of the program is that it comes with 6 years worth of, for example, our frog dissection in life science. So the program comes with vouchers And so as soon as you are ready to get your frogs, you just mail it in, and they come within, I think, 4 business days, Sean?
It was pretty quick. Even snowstorm, it was still only 4 days.
We were all really concerned if our zebrafish were going to show up frozen or not. In fact, they videoed opening the box because we were all sure that they were fine. So even the live organisms, they come with a voucher, and that is included in the cost of the full 6 years.
That's great.
There are a few
Yeah,
things
good
that
question.
It makes it your list, and it's pretty quick.
Are there other questions? Trustees? It looks like it was a lot of fun. I already learned things right here in the meeting.
Just like with the science class.
Yeah, I
Welcome to come
know.
in.
Yes. So this is an action item also, and I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve Carolina Biological Smithsonian Science for 6th and 8th grade science curriculum as presented.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any other discussion on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
So, we also have the Generation Genius Science, which is
I'll do it.
additional.
I make a motion to approve Generation Genius Science for 6th through 8th science curriculum adoption as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. Again, a huge thanks to all of you. Yes?
I do want to say, I do want to publicly thank, I've been through this. The last math adoption, I was actually the assistant superintendent in charge. That's how long ago it was. So I want to applaud Andra Murray for her patience, because I do not have that amount of patience, and she stuck with it all the way through here. Casey helped then obviously this year. And then to have these parents, every time I went, Catherine was there, every single meeting, I don't think she missed an entire meeting, and and then meeting you tonight and knowing you were being part of that, I just want to thank all of them and the staff that did it. This is a ton of work.
Yeah.
So for all of them, and Lisa McElroy and everybody here, I just want to thank you. We really do appreciate it, and I know the staff is going to appreciate that they're going to have up-to-date curriculum. So very, very much thank you to all of you.
I was on the science curriculum committee in 2006.
Thank you, Curly. Thank you.
So look how long
So,
it
I
lasted,
know.
though.
Yeah, I know. It's a good adoption. So we're going to move right on. Time is of the essence here, and we have a second reading of a policy, and it is the policy we were discussing that we will look at tonight and then bring back.
Yes, if this could just be the first read, if people have any questions.
Sure.
And again, just for the record, so that staff know that we listen to their feedback on that.
So what we're seeing in yellow, I would like clarity for the trustees. Is what is in yellow include what we saw, the changes the first time, plus the changes you have made?
Yes.
So now this is the composite of what we, yep.
It's the second first read.
Yes, it's the second first
I
read.
did have a question. Is there a way to know, or does it matter the different, like which changes were already there, or which ones we made from the staff?
In your board book at the March meeting, you could pull up that policy. Nothing changed.
But
correct, that would be first reading, but now this, that's attached.
Compiles
to the
can you
April.
just give us a
If
brief
I could
summary of
just
what
give
you
a brief
added?
summary, that would be helpful.
Yes, please.
So they just wanted to make sure that clarify that they didn't want to be in trouble if they had said something that they agreed with politically or not politically, something religious, something that wasn't supposed to be on a district website. It left it a little bit too nebulous to be able to say, like, what's the separation between personal. So I just clarified, if it's a district social media site and you're identifying yourself as a district employee, then you have to be professional. You can't have any of the carryover. If it's your personal site, it's just a completely separate site. That we just clarified that.
And that's under that keep personal and professional accounts separate.
Yep, that piece.
Now, does that come into play at all with their discussion? Like if it's a teacher and on their profile, it lists what they do or where they work, and then they have that? I mean,
yes.
How is that? Obviously, that's their personal page. and they should be able to say whatever they.
Right, but they can't, and this is in the Code of Ethics, they can't, and I sat on the Professional Standards Commission on the Code of Ethics for the Executive Committee, and we went through the Code of Ethics for 6 years. The number one concern that kept coming up was people would have personal sites saying that they worked as a teacher in A, B, and C school district, and then they started saying things that were really their personal opinions, maybe see themselves with a drink or inappropriate things for professionalism. So there has to be a clear delineation for the Code of Ethics between your personal, do whatever you want, but you can't. I mean, in a small community, they're going to know that you are a teacher. But in the you have to have that has to be separate. And then in the professional sites, you know, so that's
you can say where you work.
Yeah,
so
that's what this is trying to do.
What I'm hearing you say is on their personal page, they don't say they work at such and such a school. And they don't put their email that links them to a school.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's just following the Code of Ethics.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that. It's just, I can see how that's gonna be difficult.
Yeah.
Like, and walking on eggshells, you know, like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And being cautious.
Yeah, being cautious, that's staff concerns for sure.
It just goes to the, you know, you have to be cautious, you have to be cognizant of where you work and what you do, and this is a public forum, but you know, you have to be smart, you have to be professional.
So did anyone have any response back or changes to what you see tonight in the highlighted? We had this several days ago, we got it Friday. Didn't we get this Friday? Yes.
So if you have any.
I would just point of reference, ask the board make a motion to table until next meeting since it was listed
since it
on
is
the
a second,
agenda.
since it's a second reading, we can table it for approval at the next meeting.
Would you like that motion?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to table the approval of
Policy 53.
Policy 5328, employees of social media sites.
I could have done that. I'll second that, though.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any other comment or discussion? This is not a matter of levity. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes, and the second reading of 5328 is tabled until our May meeting, or next meeting, actually.
I thought we did pretty good.
So now, somebody who's able, I would hear a motion to move into executive session.
You do have
administrative announcements. Are there any administrative announcements? Anyone? Okay.
I would just say, I wish my students had invited you to the Pride Games this Friday. If you want to stop by in the last hour of the day, I think, and the theme is going to be, because ISAT start on Monday, so the theme will be do your best on the test. It's a blast. We want to see it in person this Friday, Sandpoint Middle School.
Bullpup Pride.
Bullpup Pride.
Okay, great. Good. Anyone else? You? No? Yes?
Well, we are doing SATs tomorrow for the whole junior class, so that's super exciting. And we were thankful for a pause in the April showers. We got some tennis and softball in today. And we're sending a group with Clark Fork and LPO students to K-Tech on Friday for hard hats, hammers, and hot dogs. We got to get it right there. So that's some of our fun stuff coming up. So.
Excellent. Any other announcements? With that, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I make a motion to move into executive session as provided for in Idaho Code Title 74, Section 206, subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, or public school student.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Trustee Peters.
Yes.
Trustee Decker.
Aye.
Trustee Williams.
Aye.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
50-50 tonight. Okay. Thank you for those of you who stayed to the end. You get a gold star.
Yeah, there you go.